I am Lesroy Williams, the Director General of the St.Kitts and Nevis Information Service. And it is my pleasure to have with me today Dr.Arthur Winston Martin, who is a Research Technology Manager at Daikin America Incorporated R&D Technical Center. Dr. Martin, welcome.
Thank you very much, Mr. Williams.
Now, the role of the diaspora continues to be emphasized. Many Kittitians and Nevisians who have made their home abroad continue to do extremely well in many fields, in academia. And because they are abroad, they still have that longing, that desire for their homeland. And one of the desires and the longing that they have, or the main one, is to contribute towards national development. And so therefore, every avenue must be given to help those in the diaspora to contribute to their homeland. This interview is one such avenue. We have Dr. Martin, quite an accomplished man, PhD, in the area of engineering, polymer science, but this is where he grew up. This is where he went to school. This is where he was socialized as a young boy. Something that we ought to be extremely proud about. And so, Dr. Martin, I want you to tell us something about yourself, your education background, starting from primary and secondary, and later on tertiary.
Okay. First of all, I'd like to say thank you, Mr. Williams, for conducting this interview. It would be remiss of me not to mention Dr. Thelma Phillip Brown, who was instrumental in putting this together in her initiative to look at the diaspora and have individuals, professionals, to come back and contribute to our wonderful federation. What I'd like to say is that I grew up in Basse-Terre, St.Kitts in College Street, and I went to the Basse-Terre Boys School. Then I went on to the Basse-Terre Junior High School and the Basse-Terre High School and the sixth form, where I completed my education. Now, I think one of the most important things I'd like to say today is that sometimes we take it for granted and we're not aware of how good that we have it with respect to education. I've been blessed in the sense that I've had the opportunity to have a middle-class education in what some may consider a third world country without paying for it. If you were to go to the US, the UK, or any of these regions, even the US Virgin Islands, in order to get this standard of education, this high level quality of education and socialization, you would have to pay a lot of money to get that opportunity. Furthermore, you would have to live in a suburb in which the income levels are extremely high, in which certain people are written off before they're even born. So what I'd like to say to this country is that keep building, keep improving on what you have, because you're delivering a world-class education at the secondary level for free.
Yes.
And so I think that's one of the important points that I wanted to deliver so that we could continue impacting our education system,
right,
and producing people such as myself.
Right. And it's good that you mentioned that, because In some places, as you outlined, not everyone has that access to a high school education. And here, everyone basically
That
has
is correct.
access, not only access, but it's also free. In some places, education can be a very elitist
You're
sort
correct.
of thing. And if you don't have the money, as you said, where you cannot get access,
You're written off.
you're written off. That's the word that you use. And here we have access, which means that everyone is basically given an equal opportunity to excel.
And to expound on your point, uh, to add to a famous quotation, is that education is the great equalizer. So we are living within that embodiment, while other so-called developed leading countries are not providing that opportunity.
It is a great equalizer. I do agree with you, but that can be a debate for another time, because still there are some other factors um, that come into play that sometimes, even though a person would have excelled and they're so educated and so on, sometimes race and color
And class.
and class and all of those sort of a thing still sort of, hinder educated people from making the contribution that they can make.
And I totally agree with you. And that is the segment of our society that needs some adjustment. I think we've done well in educating ourselves, but to bring equity and fairness in our system, I think it's incumbent upon our leaders, and I'm not just talking about political leaders, I'm talking about clergy, I'm talking about any private organizations, I'm talking about any voluntary organizations such as the Rotary Club, etc., the Boy Scouts, to come together and work on, I would say, societal reforms. I just wanted to touch on something because I had this discussion with Dr. Hazel, also is our medical officer, last evening, in which one of the ideas we spoke about is the government identifying the need areas, right? Well, we need counselors in St. Kitts. There's a lot of issues. There are abuse in the home, and that could lead to kids growing up not having the correct environment, which would lead to crime, right? So we need to identify the areas of needs and not give scholarships just because of, party affiliation or on who you are, but give it based on needs and give it based on some sort of assessment. Well, this guy has been a leader in society. He may be on the wrong side of the fence, but he's active in sports. He's active in the community. And guess what? And he also deliver all A's. Well, he would be at the top of my ticket.
Right.
And
You're
so,
looking for a well-rounded person.
correct,
Mhm.
because to operate in a global environment, you need to have such pedigree. So it's not all about academics all the time. It's also about your leadership potential and the other skills that you could bring to the table. So I think we need to start looking at developing talent as opposed to handing out degrees, which is a completely different paradigm, if you will. So I think those are the type of things that, if we get more time, when I
Sure.
get back, I could lend ideas on policy with respect to education, so we could take the baseline standard education that we have that is already exceptional and even make it greater. How do we fix the tertiary level education which we have to acquire overseas, abroad? And even furthermore, I know we have institutions here in which we're starting to do that. How can we get even more into that? I don't see any reason why a 68 square mile island with such a GDP, leading GDP in the Caribbean, couldn't have another college here like University of the West Indies. I don't see any reason why. We have good infrastructure. We have many things better than many other islands. So we need to take the forward step in that direction and not look behind us.
Right. Okay. Now you've outlined, of course, some of your educational background, your early educational background. Now let us journey a little bit further from where you came to where you are now, because you would have had a primary, a secondary, and then you would have had tertiary education. Now, something that um, our prime minister, present prime minister, has always said is that we need to increase the percentage of graduates that we have in the St. Kitts and Nevis society, um, which is important. Okay, so tell us
Right.
a little bit more about your educational journey
Yes.
up to the tertiary level.
So yeah, and thank you for leading into that question. Now, when I finished Pastor High School, sixth form, um, I went to work at the post office. Sorry, it was the passport office. And I remember someone saying to me, I don't think that this job would facilitate where you want to go. And then about a month after, I was moved to the customs department. And then there was a gentleman by the name of Raphael Archibald, who was the headmaster of the Bastille High School. He came to me and he said, I don't think that's a place where you would want to be either. And not any disrespect to the type of job, but he was talking about the type of job that would suit me based on my career aspirations of trying to be of aspiring to be a chemical engineer.
Mm-hmm.
And so he explained to me and said, why don't you, I know you would want to teach chemistry, but I have an immediate opening for geography. And he also said, and you're involved in debate and you could help in that area. And I went to teach geography with so-called a minor in chemistry, in that when there was openings and or any of the teachers were missing or any extra class, I would teach chemistry. And from there, I went on to use that as my foundation to start working towards college. There was no distractions. I was besides me were other educators, right? I was in an intellectual environment, right, which was the best preparation for going to college based on what I wanted to do. So then, another person that was really instrumental, considered a mentor at the time, was Lincoln Maynard. We know him as Contender. And there was Mr. Morton, sorry, Keith Douglas. And then there's Novelet Morton, who was my English and general paper teacher. All these people I considered were instrumental in preparing me for tertiary education. And it's so much to mention of the people that actually bond together to make sure that they're looking out for your future and preparing you for your tertiary education. But these are a few, otherwise there's a long list, but these are a few people that were most impactful in preparing me for college. And not just from an intellectual standpoint, not always so much from a preparation standpoint, but from a psychological standpoint, in saying you can do it, in saying, hey, be careful what you do now. Remember, this is where you want to go. So I really give my hats off to these individuals for really helping me and preparing me. So I went on to college, University of Virgin Islands, and I did chemistry, and I played basketball for the university team. I did track and field. I was able to participate in different games, University of the West Indies game in St. Augustine campus. I went on to do South America Olympics, I was invited to meet in Guadeloupe, and even the Virgin Islands team wanted to put me on their team. And by then, I was off to transfer to chemical engineering at
Okay,
City College.
right. So you are a leader on the global stage. Um, in fact, you are the research and technology manager at Daikin America Incorporated, R&D Technical Center. Could you tell us a little bit more about this company,
Yes.
and also why it is that you chose chemical engineering and chemistry disciplines for your career?
Yeah. Thank you. So I'll first start about choosing the career. So I was very strong in chemistry, and sometimes I wish at that time that chemistry was the only subject that I could do. But as you know, you don't have your way to do that, right? There's a curriculum. So the other subject that I was pretty sharp in was biology, and then followed by maths and physics. So I was always strong in the sciences. So when I started figuring out my career, and I think this is an important point for any of the young people who are looking towards making a career determination, I actually went around to our professionals in the society asking for advice.
Mhm.
I remember going to Dr. Claxton's office and said, I'm thinking about being a doctor. And I remember I was in sixth form at that time, and he gave me all of his biology books that was on his shelf, his undergraduate. I went home, I read them, right? I was always reading ahead. I did that pretty often. So using the people around you, right? They don't have to be your general,
Yes.
right? It doesn't matter. They could be 40, 50 years older. And I think this is something that is done too little in our society. Don't be afraid to acquire mentors and coaches to give you direction where you want to go. Because at times you may not be able to always get that from your parents, right? So you need societal assistance
Yes.
to help you. So those were some of the things that I did. And then it was pretty certain for me that medicine wouldn't be a good fit because of the fact that I just didn't like to see oozing blood and and being sick and
Yeah, not
dealing.
many people do.
Correct. And so one of the areas that I think would have best utilized my skills and my passion was chemical engineering. So it was a thought process. And if you realize how I explained to you how I got there, it wasn't that I woke up one day and said I wanted to be a chemical engineer. I had several years within the sixth form level, which is a good place to start thinking about what you really want to do. If you want a place to rest, I would advise people don't leave out of fifth form and go to college. Go there and you start processing your thoughts and you start being in an intellectual environment and you're able to talk with each individual and say, I want to do this, I want to do that. And
At
so
the sixth form level.
at the sixth form level, it's very important. It's pre-college. Now I don't even know how we consider it, but
It really is seen as pre-college or first year
First year college,
university. But nowadays some people are saying, oh well, it's a waste of time. I just go from high school and I just go to.
I totally disagree with that because, one of the reasons that it's not a waste of time, remember, there are students graduating from high school at the age of 15, 16. In the U.S., that would be called early admissions. Early admission students could have a tough time being in a freshman with people that are 19 and 20 and considered their peers, and you're not matured at that time.
Mm-hmm.
At 15 and 16, 17 gives you time for 2 more years to become matured and also develop some leadership skills,
Yes.
which are important. So I think that type of preparation is important. So if I get back on track to your original question, I chose chemical engineering because I had a thought process. I thought about it. I thought what would best match my personality, what would best match my skills. And I had enough people around me to help me, to guide me towards that career determination. So from there, I went on, got my bachelor's degree in 1993, and then I went on to do a degree in polymer science and engineering, a master's degree, and I found out by then I had an inner thirst for learning and also for innovation. And I was told, if you're going to be respected as an innovator, you have to acquire a PhD.
Yes.
So that's the important point, that anyone that's listening that want to assume a career in chemical engineering and chemistry, if you're in any developed country, you need a PhD to work in research. If you have a bachelor's or master's, you would be called a technician. And that is, I think, a serious advice. I hire into my group bachelor's and master's in chemistry and physics, and they're technicians in my group. I only hire PhDs to do research. So that explains where I came from and why I make the decision to do what I've done. So any individual who is interested in doing research, and whether coming back to St. Kitts, whether overseas, you require a doctoral degree to do that type of work.
Mm-hmm.
Innovation is not easy,
Mm-hmm.
right? I read a lot.
Right.
On my spare time is reading. There's no spare time for me. I'm always thinking of the next new thing, right? And the graduate work gives you the opportunity to read, think nonstop. It's just a recurring process where you just.
What message, what jumps out at me is that you said you read a lot. It seems like today young people are not reading as much. Or maybe I should say, maybe they're reading, but in different ways. I don't know. But, in terms of a book, having a book,
A physical
a
book.
physical book and reading, they're attached to their cell phones. And of course, you're into technology is your area. They're attached to their cell phones and their laptop computers and all of that sort of a thing. And they're learning through these technological advancements. But in terms of that book and the reading and the development of the imagination and the development of the mind, what word would you really have for young people in terms of the love for reading?
So there are no shortcuts in life. Okay, so it doesn't matter how much technology props, I would call them, that you provide. The brain still have basic compartments, and it requires to be stimulated. So if I focus on idea generation and innovation, you really have to read. It doesn't really matter whether you have an actual tablet and you're flipping pages on a tablet, or you have a physical book. You have to invest time in reading. In order for you to think out of the box, you have to continue to read. Now, if you realize, in my biography, I have over 20 patents filed. And that is international patents as well as U.S. patents. They're filed sometimes in 5 countries, 6 countries, 10 countries. And I've filed over 40 patents, and some of them are still pending. They'll be issued in a couple of years. Now, the reason why I'm emphasizing on this, because I had no idea when I started my career. I thought innovation and having a patent was a huge dream that I could never accomplish. And it's still one of the most difficult things to do, to put a whole pattern together. But one of the questions that you refer to, which is reading, without reading, I wouldn't be able to think about the next idea. So for many people, they view innovation as, I wake up out of my bed and I thought of something and I innovate. It doesn't work like that. A second point I want to refer to is the fact that you could have a GPA of 4.0. You could have graduated from sixth form with 10 O levels and 4 A levels and got all A's. That doesn't make you an innovator, because passing a test is different from actually idea generation and seeing that idea come to fruition, right? There's an evolving thought process where you have to put that thought together, and you have to say, okay, I'm going to design that
Yes.
pen,
Yes.
and here are the design parameters. So there's a lot that goes into it. So it requires reading, and the second phase is training, right? So you have to be able to go and attend conferences, take different courses, and this is post degrees. It's a continuous learning process, which includes reading as one segment, talking to people, communication, conferences,
Yes.
presentations. You learn. You present, people ask you questions, they start talking to give you ideas. So it's a whole process to operate on a global stage. Back to your last question, you have to be prepared. And that goes beyond education.
Right. Now, could you give us sort of a brief overview of some of the technologies that you are currently working on?
Yes. I'll be I think, adept and appreciate that question. Some of the things that I work on are very cutting edge. And at first I was a little nervous coming to St. Kitts to talk about technologies that they may have never heard of or may never adopt. But my role here is to open up eyes and have people, especially the young ones, aspire to do the type of technologies that I do. So here's what, right? Being a little humble. I don't think there's anything special about what I've done. I think anyone here, if they're willing to put in the time and preparation, can achieve the same thing, can work on the same cutting edge technologies, right? So I'm not one to say I'm the only one have done this. I want other people to follow that path and do the type of things that I've done. So moving back into your question, I've worked on making polymers for fuel tubes. So the fuel tube that run through your car that carries your fuel, I've designed those materials. Another technology, the plastic that goes over greenhouses all over the world, that only lets certain light in, certain light out, that blocks heat for greenhouses. I've designed some of those materials. The material that you see in the Superdomes where they have the Super Bowl, they're transparent. It's a plastic that's weather resistant, it's strong, but it replaces glass. It's lightweight. It could take tons of snow. I've designed those plastics. Then let's move to some other areas. Let's just talk about wire and cable insulation. All the wires that you see that are running through here, that material, I've designed those materials, right? So do you realize the different directions of technology I'm talking? Some have nothing to do with each other, but they have all one thing in common. It's a material and it's a polymer, right? So I can design polymers for aerospace, your fighter jets, commercial planes, all of the insulation that running through. They require certain regulations. They require certain standards. Polymers for downhole cable for drilling. They have to send cable, 12,000 feet down. I'm responsible for designing some of those cables. So I cover a whole span of technology areas, whether it's telecommunication, including the technology I'm working on now, 5G, where these are high-speed data cables that are going to be used right here in St. Kitts someday, whether it's 2 years from now, 3 years from now. I don't know the adoption period, but I know in the U.S. it would be 2 years. In 2020, you would have 5G technology by Verizon, AT&T, and all the big telecommunications. And I know it'll get here, but I don't know when.
Right.
So I've worked on all those technologies. I'm working on them now. I'm working on the electric vehicles. So designing new plastics, the standards, the requirements for plastic and electric vehicles is going to be different from what we call ICE technology, which is internal combustion engine. So when you hear the acronyms EV, that's electric vehicle. And when you hear ICE, that internal combustible engine, which we use currently on the island, Barbados is getting into electric vehicles. They already have some on the island. Bahamas is doing the same thing. Why not us? Right? What makes them so special? Why can't we do it? We have extremely smart people here.
Yes.
And I know who they are. And so the point I'm making is that some of the things that I'm doing are applicable and appropriate for a country our size, our economies of scale. I think it's a disservice for anyone in my field to come to St. Kitts and give them some highfalutin perspective of technologies that can be used. That is not what I'm going to do. That's not my objective. My objective is to deliver, whether now in my first segment of letting you know what I do, and getting information out there, and I'll be back. But my objective is to bring appropriate technologies that would improve quality of life and enhance the lives of our society in the Federation and the region. That is my objective. So I'll be selective. I'll pick those technologies out and say, hey, this is what you can do. But I've had the opportunity to work on very cutting edge technology, and I think some of them can be applicable to the Federation.
I think that the government has realized the importance that science, technology, engineering, and math play in the development of countries, and especially here in the Caribbean, in the region, and on a national level. And so the curriculum that they're talking about now in schools will give greater emphasis to a STEM education: science, technology, engineering, and math. Now, all of those things, of course, you are involved in.
Correct.
Science, technology, engineering, and you couldn't get there without the math.
That's correct.
And now they're saying STEAM instead of STEM. They're adding the A in there and they're saying the arts.
Correct. And that's where the leadership development comes from, the arts.
That's where it comes from.
Right.
Okay.
You have touched a very important segment in this interview, because if you allow me, I think I referred to that earlier, where we go and we cram and we pass a test and we have a beautiful GPA, and you go for an interview and no one wants to hire you because they'll see you as being reclusive, lack of social skills, can't interact with people. And we're in a different world. 40, 50 years ago, it used to be a premium for what we call core competency.
Yes.
Core competency means he's the greatest accountant. Oh, he's a great scientist. He can do math. The world has changed. We're in a global environment. We're in a more interactive world.
Communication is
key. And so, what I'll say to people in the Federation, all the way up, starting at the primary level, our curriculum should have some segment of communication where the arts and science are linked and not separated.
Right. It's not an either or. It's a both and. Okay. Good. Now, in terms of, for example, here, St. Kitts was ranked highly in terms of the ICT index in the world, and received some awards, of course, as one of the countries that is growing fastly in terms of technology. And we have an ICT center which is very modern. It's up at the CA Paul Southwell industrial site. And the government is thinking in terms of how it can use e-government and all of that sort of a thing to cut down a lot of the bureaucracy and to get business moving faster. You can pay your bills online and all of that sort of a thing that really requires technology. So the government is moving in that direction. They've spoken about this one shop, portal where you can go for everything and all of this sort of a thing. So in terms of policy, the government is moving in that direction. Is there any sort of a contribution that you can make from a policy perspective based on some of the things that you mentioned earlier in terms of what you do, how this can impact the adoption of some of these ideas?
Yes. So, touching on policy and government and politics, I would say to governments, political leaders, that first of all you have to have a vision, and it seems to me that you're saying some of this visionary thinking is already on the run.
Yes.
With respect to e-government,
yes, it is.
and making government and administration more effective. Now, one of the things that I'd like to say is that, and this is an advice to political leaders and government and policy, is that normally the leaders or party or political affiliates who says it can't be done, there's an electorate normally of a younger age waiting to tell you it can be done, right? So I don't think I have to say any more on that particular area, but I'm saying you have to aspire to the younger generation and give them the tools to succeed in the areas that you're talking about. It requires a change of culture, shift in culture.
Yes.
So education. So now, are you going to implement these and drop this technology on them without an understanding? Sometimes it takes time, cultural shift for them to get accustomed to that. Going to the bank and depositing your money and knowing that you're speaking to a person, it's a cultural shift to go online. Getting your driver's license online is different from going to Internal Revenue Service.
Right.
So where do you start the education and the communication process? You have to have phase one in order for you to get the type of adoption we're talking about, where people feel happy with the service. They don't feel encumbered that this is another thing you push on them. So I think we have to spend more time in education and communication. And this is exactly the type of forum we're talking about, the discussion we're having. If people are hearing this, they're saying, okay, let me think about this. Well, let me go read, let me go Google. As opposed to the government saying to you, one day when you wake up, by the way, you're going to have to use our e-government policy and go and get your license online.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's really getting the cultural shift to learning through education, presentations, communication. There's different forum to accommodate that. So
any sort of education today must include the use of technology. Let's face it.
yes,
A few years ago, I did teacher training to be certified in the classroom. And one of the things is that there's a component that includes technology. You must show the use of technology in the classroom because of the age in which we live. It is no longer talk and chalk or chalk and talk. You have to be able to somehow incorporate this technology into the whole learning process.
That's right.
To get it across really to our young people.
And that is where I think some innovation comes in with respect to education and the way we teach. And let me get into some topics now with you.
Sure.
This is, I think, a good segue into this topic. Now, what are some of the technologies that are appropriate for St. Kitts that are out there that I worked on, that I know of? So let's talk about agriculture, and let's talk about vertical farming, or what we call smart farming.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we don't have to get a company from Taiwan to start building smart farms. Why can't we start it at our sixth form level and have them build their own smart farm, right? It doesn't even have to sixth form level. It could be just anywhere in our primary and secondary level.
Mm-hmm.
They build a smart farm and they are leading. Now, government doesn't have to invest a mega amount of dollars to say we start farming and impose a technology that people don't understand and can't execute on.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So we call that, in my world, we call that the pilot phase. We call that prototyping.
Yes.
We never go and build a plant and make hundreds of thousand tons of material without prototyping. We can do the same concept here. You start out at your secondary level and you have prototyping. So you build a smart farm at the high school. That's part of their coursework for agricultural science. That is part of their coursework for biology, for plant science. Right? You incorporate all of that in there. That is their lab.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Now they can take that technology and the government can use that prototype and scale it up for smart farming. Smart farming has 95% less water than traditional farming. You can recycle the water back, right, from plants transpiring, release water. You have no pesticides, herbicides, and all the different chemicals that you have to use to get the yield that you need when you're doing traditional farming.
Right.
And then there's the monkey problem. I've heard enough of the monkey problem. I've heard it from so many people about, for me, the monkey problem, the monkey eat my crops, is similar to the dog ate my homework.
Yeah.
And so we have to get an initiative to take care of the monkeys, because the monkeys do eat the plants.
They do.
Right. And so what do? There are technologies. Can we get a conservatory area for them? Wildlife where we fence them in, we catch them, put them there. Can we get some sort of ultrasound technology where we build fences? Because you have to be, I like to use the word humane to animals also. You don't want to shock them to death or scare them too much. I know there are strategies of using electric current, but could we use some sort of audio or visual? We have a monkey research center. You kind of learn their dislikes and you start doing traditional farming and building those fences. Can we move to smart farming, vertical farming, where you get the LED lights that deliver the right amount of radiation, the right wavelength, and you could plant all year round. Lettuce, tomato, spinach, you name it. We have our tourism industries growing, right? We can feed those crops to our tourist industry.
No, some people eat the monkeys too. And some people believe that, it should really be a staple on the menu of restaurants and so on, as a sort of exotic meat.
That's not what I knew growing up. I'm sorry. And then, secondly, so that's agriculture. So that if we were to go into vertical farming, controlling the monkey population, I don't think we're ready to run them out of the country yet.
Mm-hmm.
But there are things we can do from a technological standpoint in which we could control them so we could have sustainable farming.
Yes.
Using green methods. We use solar energy to deliver the electricity for the vertical farms that I'm talking about,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because you'd have autonomous or automatic sprinklers. You would have LED lights delivering the wavelength. You could grow all year round. And now you can deliver to the supermarkets, to the restaurants, to the tourist industry, and you can feed the population, reduce the cost of importation, and improve the quality of life.
Mhm.
So that's what you hear me talking about, appropriate technologies for quality of life enhancement. Then let's get into telemedicine. Um, we can do that remotely. We have many physicians in the diaspora, specialists. They're yearning to contribute, but they don't want to give up their families and come here. And
Yes.
now this is an ideal technology to have collaborative medicine, where they're here, they're nephrologists, they're dermatologists, they interact with your primary care physician here, and that would reduce also the amount of money that insurance companies have to spend here, sending people to Boston and Miami for treatment, when they could have a specialist there using telemedicine, which is really instantaneous video and audio conferencing. You could do some of the operations that way,
Yes.
right? You could have multiple physicians in one room in the U.S. with one physician here working on a patient, right? Those are the type of things I'm advocating. I think our chief medical officer, Dr. Hazel, she's aware of that. We have had discussions about that. It's just a matter of getting into action, right? There's obviously a phase approach. You know, it's the education, it's getting all the physicians together, getting all the policymakers, government, and saying, hey, we want to do this, and how are we going to do it? I think we have the the minds to do it. We just need to take the initiative, and then we need to have the impetus to really go at it and be successful. So these are some examples of telemedicine. It would probably take a time to cover all these topics, but I'm just trying to summarize telemedicine, vertical farming, 5G. That is basically 100 times faster than 4G LTE, where you now can use it in sports, agriculture, medicine, because your data is moving really fast now, 100 times faster than now. Right. So you could do a lot more things with it. Entertainment, music festival, carnival, tourism, all that stuff. And then let's talk about one more topic, which is more of an emerging technology, I think, for St. Kitts, further down the road. But I think we need to have a technology council here in St. Kitts that allowed a vision for where technologies are moving, how we could, and I'm willing to initiate that and start that. We look at electric vehicles. I'm tearing down in my facility anything that has to do with what we call internal combustion engine. Those fuel hoses,
yes,
we're making them obsolete. We move into electric cars, right? Now, 3 years from now, 4 years from now, Europe and Asia and America are going to be using electric cars. It's going to be growing year to year. And then some guy in St. Kitts 10 years from now is stuck with a piece of hose that has a leak, and he's trying to find a place where to buy it. And he goes to all the auto parts in St. Kitts, and they said, oh, well, we phoned China to see if we could get it. Oh, we called here, we can't get it. Guess what? Because we didn't have the vision to realize that that was coming and didn't prepare for it.
Right.
So when I'm talking about technology, I'm not talking about just what we can do tomorrow to make money for our businesses, for our entrepreneurs, or what we can do to improve quality of life. There's a third phase, having a visionary plan of what's to come and having our society prepared for it. And if they can't practice it here, they could at least practice it abroad and bring back that concept here. That is what China does all the time. They send a whole ton of students to the U.S. They educate them, and they bring them back for the next 5-10 years of technology.
Right.
We can do that too.
Sure. Now, of course, we think of our region, the Caribbean region, and we have a lot of young people. The Caribbean really is loaded with young people. And they have tremendous potential to help this Caribbean region to develop. In particular, we are talking about St. Kitts and the Nevis. We have a very young population here, energetic.
Yes, we do.
Very energetic. And this energy can be channeled into so many positive things. We may have a few negative things to work on, but most of it, and most of our young people, are very positive and want to do something positive with the energy that they have. Now, what message do you have for young people here in St. Kitts and Nevis? You grew up here as a young man, with respect to their aspirations to become innovators and technology leaders like yourself,
Okay.
whether abroad or right here.
Okay.
And we can close with that question.
Yeah, thank you very much. So, my answer to that is never limit yourself, and never let anyone determine your aspirations. I think it requires innovation and technology, requires hard work. It's not just enough to be smart, or what we would call have the core competency, which is I'm good in physics, I'm good in math, I'm good in chemistry. It requires, I think, futile, repetitive work and thinking. I would encourage people to join organizations, whether it's the Rotary Club, any organizations within your school. I would like to see Kittitians form more clubs and organizations and help develop our team, give them more conduits or channels, if you will, for leadership development. The world is changing, as I said. Being a guy who could balance the balance sheet,
Yes.
we call that core competency. You need emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is how you interact with people, how you interact with the environment, how you treat people, your leadership skills. We call it emotional intelligence. There's a short form, EI, right? That's what we call it in the U.S. And so when we interview people, we would say, I can't hire that person. They don't seem to have any EI, right? This is real. I don't know if we look at that in St. Kitts as, yeah, if I have someone and both people have 8 subjects and I need a tiebreaker to see who I'm hiring, then I'm going to look at what part of the
What
community,
qualities?
what other qualities do they have?
Yeah,
Right.
for example, people's social skills. Do you say good morning? People don't think it's important. Do you say good afternoon? Thank you.
Correct.
These are basic things. I remember somebody giving me a story once of this person that went for a job. They passed the person in the corridor and they didn't realize that this is the person who would be interviewing them.
Correct.
And then the person now, but this person passed me like a full bus and didn't even say good morning.
So I think you're touching into a topic of respect and treat everyone the same. And so this is how I conduct my life. I work in a very complex society, multiracial society, different cultures. So I make no assumptions, right? So the vice president, the CEO, the guy who cleans my office, they all get treated the same way. I know we're in different cultures, different societies, right? And there's things that we have to tweak in our societies. So to refer to what you were saying, we need to move to having the ultimate respect for individuals as opposed to saying, well, what's your party affiliation? Or who is your family for you to get the opportunity? We need to move away from that. So if I get back on track, on target to the question you asked about innovation, I'd like to see people concentrate not less on not just education, but on leadership skills, being more interactive with society. I think that's an important aspect of innovation. I'll tell you why. You have to be able to articulate that great, grand new idea you came up with if it wasn't for Lincoln Maynard and Mrs. Cable, Novelet Morton, to name a few, they're English. Lincoln Maynard was a chemistry teacher, but he also was he were in acting clubs,
Right.
I think, coming out of college. And so he used to put on shows. So he was pretty strong in the arts. So you mix the arts with chemistry. He was my debating coach. And so debating helped me. Now, if you look at many of my counterparts who were as good as being chemistry, being able to accomplish what I've accomplished, they would have to add some other attributes. For example, like debating. I'm able to go anywhere in the world, any corner of the world. I've been to China, I've been to Japan, I've been to Europe, many countries, 20, 30 times, in any corner of the world. And it doesn't matter who it was I was standing up in front. Because of those skills stemming back 32 years ago that I acquired, I'm able to stand up in front of any audience and deliver my grand, great new idea. In a boardroom to my leadership team, executive team, I'm able to stand up. I'm able to present with visuals, audio, and show them why this idea is important, what's the value proposition, how much money it's going to make, how I'm going to do it. So you realize I'm getting into segments that probably we can't cover in this interview. That when you speak about innovation, that's a loaded question.
Yes.
Because innovation is not about saying, hey, why can't we bring electric cars here tomorrow? There's a whole process that comes with innovation in terms of education, preparation, execution, operation, communication. That's what we call innovation. An idea is only an idea unless you could bring it to fruition in terms of enhancing, and I'd like to end with this, enhancing and improving the quality of life in our society.
Right.
If you cannot do that with any idea, I do not consider it as innovation. We call that having no utility.
Mm-hmm.
It's an idea with no utility.
No use.
No use. Right?
Yes.
So I would encourage people to not just concentrate on their core competency area, whether it's physics, chemistry, engineering, but to also acquire some of those other skills. Go kick a ball, go take up a cricket bat,
Go sing.
go and sing, do the arts. You add the arts in there, STEAM.
Mm-hmm.
Put some of that in there, and so you become well-rounded, and then you'll be able to be successful on the global stage. The last thing you want is somebody to pigeonhole you, take you, put you in a corner, and tell you to mix chemicals in that corner all day for 20 years. If that's what you like to do, it's fine. But you asked me a specific question. How do you prepare people to operate on the global stage and to be a leader?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the question that I'm answering. Some people are very comfortable, right, mixing chemicals all day, or pouring a drink into a bottle and putting a stopper on it and getting it off onto a vehicle. And some people are very comfortable standing in front of people and telling them how much material they're going to sell, how much soda they're going to sell. And some of these people are chemical engineers, right? My point is, become well-rounded if you want to be a leader. If you want to be a leader, whether a global stage or right here in our federation, our society is pretty smart. They're going to pick the guy that know how to debate, that know how to articulate a message, over the guy who only know how to calculate something on a paper. And he wouldn't even take his head up to talk to you.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Martin, thank you so much for
Your pleasure.
coming and sharing with us. Of course, I began by saying that, those Kittitians and Nevisians were in the diaspora and making such a valuable contribution there. Those persons as well can make equally a valuable contribution to our national development here in St. Kitts and Nevis, because you never forget where you came from.
That is correct. And I never will, and that is why I'm here.
And thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay. We have been speaking with Dr. Arthur Winston Martin, who is a research technology manager at Daikin America Incorporated R&D Technical Center. Thank you so much for viewing, and we would see you at some other point.
And thank you very much for having me here.
Right.